Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Green Room. I'm live from Black Hat, so I'm actually camped out in a secret bunker location, so I don't get hacked. But welcome, everybody, and we're excited to have you here today. I'm here with my amazing co-host, Vala Afshar, our amazing producer, Elle, and, of course, our two great guests. So let's start and do reverse introductions. Rajesh, please tell us where you're calling in from, what we're talking about today, and more importantly, what we might find out in the future.
Yeah, thank you for having me. My name is Rajesh Vashist. I am the CEO of SiTime. SiTime is a public company on NASDAQ. I'm here in Santa Clara. I've been in the Silicon Valley for the last 40 years. So I sort of date myself. I see the age of all the people here, rather younger folk. But been around the block a lot, been in semiconductors most of my life here in the Valley. And as I was saying to you guys earlier, when you do chips, particularly our kinds of chips, you are the silicon in Silicon Valley. So think of us as Silicon Valley. That's where we come from.
Love that.
Excellent. Very, very cool. And I may look young, but I've been in the Valley about 30 some years. So anyways, we'll go to Richie. Where are you coming in from? What are we talking about today?
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. I'm calling in from New Jersey. I'm the new in New Jersey. It's good to be on the show. I think the last time I was in the show was over 5 years ago. So I've got a lot of catch up to do. So I'm looking forward to it. I am co-founder and chief technology and creative officer at Mobeus. We'll talk a little bit about that today, but I'm looking forward to the show.
Amazing. Yes, one of our BT 150 winners. And of course, very, very happy to have you on the show. Okay, with that, I'm turning it back to Elle. Ready for the count? And we're going to go live.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us on DisrupTV. My name is Vala Afshar. I'm the Chief Digital Evangelist at Salesforce and your co-host for the next hour. We welcome you to follow us on Twitter at DisrupTV Show, on X, DisrupTV Show. Send us your questions to Ray, myself, and our guests. We'll do our best to answer them live. Use hashtag DisrupTV. It's my pleasure to introduce my co-host, Ray Wong. He's the CEO, founder of Constellation Research. He's the best-selling author of Everybody Wants to Rule the World. I see Ray on television, on Bloomberg, on Fox Business News, on CNBC every day. In my opinion, he's probably the top futurist to follow on at Twitter or X at RWNG0. Welcome, Ray Wong, to DisrupTV.
Hey, thanks a lot. I'm here with my amazing co-host, Vala Afshar. He's the chief digital evangelist for Salesforce. He's also the author of The Pursuit of Social Business Excellence, but more importantly, his new book, Boundless, a new mindset for unlimited business success, is going to be available this September and can be pre-ordered today on Amazon. But more importantly, executives around the world are paying attention to every one of his inspirational, insightful, I'm going to say tweets and not posts. More importantly, when he's not hosting, keynoting, or leading events at Salesforce, you can catch him on business TV in terms of Bloomberg and, of course, posting insightful analyses on ZDNet as well on his LinkedIn page. But it's not about us. It's always been about our amazing guests. And, of course, we have an amazing guest we have not seen for a while on DisrupTV.
We've interviewed over 1,000 guests, and I think he was interview number 5 or 6. So he's been building big-time companies. So we're so happy that he's back, taking time off from his busy schedule. Richie Etwaru, co-founder, chairman, and chief creative officer at Mobeus. Headquartered in New Jersey, Mobeus is a human connections company seeking to reduce people's friction with technology around them. The company's solution enables a novel form of expression so that communication is clearer, comprehension is sharper, and human connections are more profound. Mobeus has developed software-only spatial computing using machine learning. We're going to learn about that. Technologist, I've known Richie over a decade. Richie has been privileged to partake in a range of transformative initiatives, exploring fields such as immersive AI, digital privacy rights, financial services, and technology infrastructure modernization. Richie's collaboration contributions span organizations like Mobeus, Humanity.co, IQVIA, UBS, Barclays, Wells Fargo. When I met Richie, he was running digital transformation at Fortune 100 companies. Richie's work has centered around integration of emerging technologies like AI, mobile, cloud computing. He is a three-time author. In 2019, way before the pandemic, Richie wrote a novel about future of work with machine bosses and colleagues and the importance of data privacy and impact of AI in business. This guy was writing about this topic in a best-selling book 6 years ago or 4 years ago. He's a three-time TEDx speaker. You're going to find out how eloquent he is in the next 30 minutes. Keynote speaker, global audiences, and an adjunct professor at Syracuse University. Welcome back, Richie, to DisrupTV.
That's it. Time's up.
Okay, good. We'll go to our next guest.
I had to cut your bio to about a 10th because we only have 30 minutes. So welcome back.
Well,
You know what? We do have to catch up. We have to figure out what you've been doing since, right? I mean, that was an amazing book, but tell us more about this journey. Where have you been and what's going on? So
Ray and Vala, thanks for having me back at the show. For the Constellation and Salesforce and CC community, it's good to be invited back here again. It was over 5 years ago since I've last been on the show. So I was probably around 40 at the time. Let me catch you up. I've taken my career and put it into the gym for the last 5 years. What I mean by that is putting it into entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is like a gym for your career. So I started in 97 in Wall Street, and I started a nice waist size of about 32, right? And by 2017, my career waist size was about a 36. So I figured, you know what? I got to put my career into the gym. For the last 5 years, I built two companies, Humanity.co, which took on privacy, and Mobeus, which is in spatial computing. Both of these were really large, kind of crazy problems, I think, to take on. You'll learn a little bit about spatial computing and why it was crazy today. So the larger the problem, the bigger the gym, the more machines they are, the more intense the workout. So that's kind of what I've been doing, 5 years in the career gym.
It's amazing because when I met you, you were a chief executive, big companies, big budget, big headcount, traveling the globe, speaking at the largest conferences as a digital transformation trailblazer. And then you decided, I'm going to go build companies. I don't want to just own a line of business. And I mean, talking Barclays. I mean, it's a line of business with mega budgets, mega headcounts, and just in an innovation lab that would be enamored by anyone. But you made a deliberate decision to walk away as a big-time exec, big-time company to go build companies. What was the inflection point? I mean, you talk about going to the gym, but you tackled big, hairy, complex problems too. When we talk about data ownership, data privacy, we were talking about the 31st human right. And now in this spatial computing, gesture-controlled world that you've built the last 3 years, these were like leading edge, very little prior art or precedence. So you were walking in a forest with no one around you, really trailblazing. Why? Was it a book? Was it a mentor? Was it a spouse?
No, do a startup, they said. That's what it was. So look, I think the career trajectory was you start with doing sort of company-wide problems, right? So you're entering your career, you take on a company-wide problem, then you start to take on industry-wide problems, and in healthcare, that's kind of what I was doing in healthcare, and financial services was more sort of sector-wide problems or company-wide problems, and did a roll-up in healthcare, acquired about 7 companies and re-platformed. I think that's the time I met you. We were just doing a deal with Salesforce. And seeing the entrepreneurs that we had acquired and the founders that we had acquired, and looking at the skill set of what these founders had, what they learned from entrepreneurship was a different end of the corporate virtue that I was learning on the inside. So I wanted to go into entrepreneurship. And the one insight that I got and given to me by a couple of people was if you want to work your career out, don't take on small problems. Take on the biggest, most challenging problems that you could find, because that's where the real fun is. And by the way, that's where the economic outcome makes sense, right? Because the risk is so high, the probability of success is so low. So privacy was a species-wide problem, right? How do we set a North Star to solve for privacy? I think we got the branding right on privacy with the 31st human right. We used natural language processing to inoculate the I accept button. If you guys will remember, what we were doing was processing B2C contracts in real time and extracting the negotiable rights in there and replacing the I accept button with sort of a different contract for consumers. These things put you in a place where you literally build resiliency on the other end of the spectrum than what you were building in the corporate world. With Mobeus specifically, and I'll give you an example with Mobeus. Mobeus is the most recent company. So Mobeus is built on a theory that what we use to communicate with each other constantly increases by aperture over time. So going back to the early days, we grunted at each other, right? Then there was telegrams, and then there was mail, and then there was text. And then everybody has experienced this. You're texting someone, but the aperture is not wide enough. So you got to go, let me call you, because you want a wider aperture, right? Around COVID, let me call you moved to, hey, let's jump on a Zoom call, right? That was the next widening of the aperture, followed by, hey, let's do a screen share, which is a little bit of a wider of the aperture. So as I was looking for things to do at the beginning of COVID rolling off of Humanity.co, I figured, what's the next widening of the aperture? And what was there was the VR headset. So I tried the VR headset on, and of course it widened the aperture. But what it was sort of an unfamiliar future. Because every movie that I've ever seen, every story that I've ever read is kind of like, Tom Cruise and Iron Man. And here I am with a toaster in my head, right? Kind of thinking, well, it's this that we really want. And then I stuck it on my kid, and my kid got addicted to it right away. And I couldn't get him off the iPad, much less the headset. So Mobeus was born to take on the challenge to say, look, could we find a wider aperture of communication that doesn't occlude our entire reality, doesn't take away so much from us? The screens don't have to be that close to our eyes. We don't have to lose that much agency, etc. I'm happy to talk about where we are and the impact that we think it brings, but from a why do startups perspective, if you're going to do a startup, you're doing it for two reasons. One is you want to use technology for good, and I tried to do that both times. And two is just be prepared to work out your career. There are muscles that you're going to work out in entrepreneurship that you didn't even know exist in the enterprise world.
So I want people to have a better understanding of the complexity and the innovative space that you pursued. So when we see demos from Meta or Microsoft HoloLens or Magic Leap, essentially, like you mentioned, a toaster, a large iPad, there's hardware that's involved, and it's close to our senses. Specifically, it's in our head. You decided that you were going to tackle the dimensions of what we're normally accustomed to, an XY dimension and a horizontal and vertical dimension, and you were going to extract as the Z scale or the Z axis, the space in front or behind your laptop, your computer, whatever computing device you're using. So you tackled this immersive, augmented reality, mixed reality challenge, but you decided you're not going to use hardware. When you pitched that to your co-founders and other team members, what was the initial reaction? We're going to provide an augmented reality experience. Everyone in the world, the biggest companies in the world, are using hardware. Mobeus is going to punt the hardware and just do it with software and AI. That's a big, bold pitch.
It is. And so I'll give you the end of the movie, but then I'll come back to the front. So we have Minority Report meets the metaverse on the devices that we own today.
So
no
no
more
additional hardware.
computers. Any computer.
No hardware. My Mac that I'm on right now, on another show, I'll just screen share and show you what it looks like. We have videos of it. We're in beta. It uses machine learning. It uses computer vision in real time. It calculates your viewing intention, your interactive intention, and you can grab things, move things, throw, swipe, look around, swim, fly like a Segway in a virtual environment, touch things, move a switch, anything that you like. The front of the air becomes completely interactive. It's like a volumetric membrane of interactivity outside of here, and the back of the screen becomes completely immersive. But your question is really pungent, which is, how do you sell that? How do you get co-founders, team members, capital, etc.?
Because you're challenging dominant logic. Dominant logic today is that in order to have an immersive experience, you need hardware.
Yep.
It's 15 years ago, dominant logic was you're not going to get into a stranger's car to go from A to B, or you're not going to rent your private home space to a stranger. That turned out to be two of the most profitable, biggest startups in the world.
So the economic,
what we're doing now.
The economic model, first of all, with any type of business case, the economic model the outcome has to match the risk, right? So the theory here was that if I was right, and if we could pull this off, this would be a horizontal capability. It's the next aperture of widening of the capability. So it didn't matter what amount of capital you were going to put in, as long as you could find the risk capital that wanted to take the potential of a 10,000, 20,000x multiplication. The math is easy, right? If you go after something that's big enough, that's meaningful enough, you could find risk capital. But what is really unique and the nuance, and you kind of got to work out in the gym 2 or 3 times in different startups before you learn how to sell it. The sale was we were going to build version 0.01 of teleportation. That was the sale. What if we could build version 0.01 of teleportation? What could that look like? How would it go? And we're here today. We had 3 years of research and development. We've had very patient investors to wait through that process. I'll tell you a little bit about, how did we miss dates, right? How far were we off from the dates and the forecasts that we had? But we're preparing to go to market now, and we're sort of in that place where we're starting to figure out, what does this mean to the human species? What does this mean to business? What does it mean to culture? It's a long runway. We've probably got another decade or 2 before this gets mass adoption. But the key sort of threshold that we've arrived at here is you no longer have to add hardware to the devices that we have today in order to have clearer communication, have sharper comprehension, have improved retention. And even potentially, we think that we'll see the evidence after some of the pilots that we're executing to see that it could actually reshape conversion. So we're at that point now where we're ready to start to kind of do what we call a go to culture. And I'm happy to talk about that, but that's where the company is today.
Actually, it's a really important piece, right? You're talking about a species-wide problem, and this is really changing the way we interact, the way we communicate, the way we engage, and more importantly, for you, what is this thing about species-wide problems that you're going after, right? Because these aren't easy. These are long hauls. These are things you're going to tackle. It's more than just exercising yourself here. Going to a workout. This is a punishing, grueling workout. Like you're doing 10 Ironmans here.
So let me share what it's like, and I'll give you a couple of examples as to what do you learn and what muscles do you grow. First of all, I would recommend that everybody go to the gym. Everyone should go to career gym. Now, you don't have to do what I did, which is to kind of rip the Band-Aid off and jump in head on for 5 years. Doing a digital transformation in a large to mid-sized company is kind of going to the gym a little bit. It's like a Peloton at home, but you're still exercising.
It's a little bit easy. Yep.
Right. The resiliency that you build is because you're on a different end of the maturity spectrum of technology. So when you're on the enterprise, you're doing things like, UBS and Credit Suisse has merged, and you have to do a mainframe migration. Okay. When you're in the startup world, especially if you take on a large species-wide problem, you're dealing with things like, could we identify a spirochete from the glucose saturation of it from lasers so that we can figure out who has Lyme disease and who doesn't have Lyme disease? right? Or you're doing what we were doing. Could we figure out machine learning models to calculate your viewing intention, to do signal processing on 2 frame buffers at the same time in the GPU without setting off the fan? So there are 2 ends of the spectrum, and things are very different on the spectrum. Let's think about a corporate virtue like forecasting, okay? If you're on the left side of that spectrum and you're doing a mainframe migration, you're probably 95% right with your forecast. You're gonna hit that date, you're gonna hit that budget, you're gonna be able to get that done. If you're on the other side of that spectrum, you're lucky if you're 5% right on the date, on the forecast. And that's why you see people that take on new frontier big problems, like Musk, for example. He's 2 years late on the Cybertruck. No surprise, because it's a frontier technology, it's a frontier activity. And to build the resilience, to be able to deal with that uncertainty, to have the intestinal fortitude, to be able to sustain and communicate and encourage and recultivate and redescribe reality to your investors and your team all along the way when you're 2 years late, that's the kind of muscle that you build on these corporate virtues. I could talk about leadership. There's a lot there. I could talk about vision. There's a lot there as well, and we can catch up on those through the show. But that's an example of what you learn on those 2 edges, so to speak.
We do have a lot of startup founders, company founders that watch the show. So I do want advice from you to these folks that are about to go to the gym, maybe for the first time. But I want to understand your life, because the market says this is an incredible space, frontier technology. Fortune Business Insights, in terms of global gesture recognition market, they project it's going to be $15 billion of investments this year. It's going to grow to $115 billion, from 15 to 115 billion by end of the decade, 2030. That's a CAGR of 29% for the next 8 years. So you're in a space where that Minority Report analogy, this is a white hot space. And I've seen Mobeus and the magic of being able to create this immersive experience with gestures and eyes and movements and just getting close back and forth. Again, the Z-axis that's in front of you. And I see it with no cost because there's no hardware. I see it without AR motion sickness. I get motion sickness when I'm walking. My eye can't look up for more than 30, 45 seconds without feeling uncomfortable. So the cost, the convenience, and the fact that I get sick makes me gravitate to what you're building. Now, I see on LinkedIn, KPMG is using Mobeus at their Tech Innovation Summit. I saw Harvard University using Mobeus at one of their recent computer science workshops. I see Accenture, a partner and beta user of Mobeus. So my sense is there's a lot of excitement around you, but I also figure you probably spend most of your days with attorneys filing patents. So there's a little bit of a grind in the gym that would be nauseating for me, but you have to protect your IP. Tell us all this, I studied complexity theory in college, but I imagine your day-to-day life is very complex. How do you stay in the gym and not get sick? How do you get yourself motivated to leap out of bed on Sundays before Mondays start, knowing you've got all these things you need to do? Because the market says you're in a white hot space. You've got big companies piloting your technology. There's going to be a pretty immense amount of pressure on your shoulders. I do see a little bit of gray here I hadn't seen in a while.
He's got a little gray hair there.
Last time I was on the show, I didn't have gray hair.
Right.
So that you grow about 2 to 3x the speed that you grow in the enterprise, and you age about 10x the speed that you age in the enterprise. So first of all, you need to have a really good partner at home. I'm married to Vashti. I've got a very supportive wife that allows me to do this. That's the first. Second is you need a really strong co-founder dynamic. Mike Sutcliffe and I, we've partnered on Mobeus. It's very helpful. Those are the 2 most important things, followed by sleep, exercise, and eating well. Nothing there has to do with tech, has to do with patents, anything else. If those things are not in place, you're not going to be able to withstand the marathon, right? Yes, I did have to learn how to write patents. We have 50 families of patents, about a dozen have been issued. Wow. After a while, the legal teams are just not fast enough, and there's too much loss in translation. So you just got to learn how to write the claims yourself. But let's go back to kind of like what is different, right? Let's talk about leadership for a second. if you're leading a team, and I'm going to use that mainframe migration, and I'm going to use software-enabled spatial computing on this side. If you're leading a team through mainframe migration, you lead from the back. You set the vision, you encourage, you enable, right? You coach, you reward, you align, and you can really lead from the back and put the team in the front. When you are trying to figure out how to create 0.01 of teleportation, you have to lead from the front. You have to be on the factory floor. You have to suspend disbelief to be able to actually get motivation out of the folks that are going there, because you're breaking through things that have been done for the first time. So your leadership muscle, the resiliency that you need to be able to advance, I call it Columbusing, okay? I'm just gonna let me go off on a tangent for a second, okay? Christopher Columbus, Pinta, Nina, Santa Maria, whatever you think about the guy, that's irrelevant. This is just the story, right? Everyone thinks the world is flat, okay? And he's on this ship. He's got people with him. He's on the front of the ship, right? Holding the front of the bow, looking forward for the rest of the world. At any moment, they could fall off the edge of the world. Any moment, okay? Young sailor comes up and goes, hey, Christopher, what's up, man? What's going on? Like, it's been 4 weeks. We're running out of food. 2 of our sailors have died. Dude, what's up? Christopher has to muster the courage to come up with leadership motivation. He's got to be able to, and you got to make stuff up right away. You see that fish? You see that fish that's on the ground there? That means that land is clear. Land is near, okay? Because fish doesn't, you got to come up with something. You see that cloud in the sky? That means that land is near. You have to lead completely differently. The leadership technique that I used at Mobeus to get through those hard breakthroughs, the visual that I used was the visual of human evolution. And I had this one schematic that I would take the team through almost every 2 weeks. It's the caveman to the kind of half walking man to the stand up human, right? Then back in front of the computer, right? Like hunched over. And then on the right side of the chart, I had 2 arrows. One arrow was someone lying on a sofa with a toaster strapped to their heads. And the other arrow was the human stood up interacting with the world around them. That's the graphic that I use to keep the team going constantly. In the enterprise, if you are on the commoditized end of technology, your leadership skill is we're going to have to do it better and more effectively than anyone else.
Right.
Okay?
Faster, better, cheaper.
When you're on the other side of technology, we have to do something for the first time. In this workout that allows you to build resiliency on the 2 edges of that spectrum really gives you a different point of view on leadership.
Hey, Richie, real quick, we're about to run out of time, and I want to ask you something. What is the next species-wide problem you're going to go after? And is it going to involve AI? Are we in AI hype hell?
And
how do people learn more about Mobeus? Where do we go?
Mobeus.com. We have a beta program.
Mobeus.
Mobeus. We have a beta program, and you can join there. Look, I'm having a great time right now with taking on software-based spatial technology. I'm proud of the work that we did with privacy. If I were to spend my time on something else, I think it would be trust. We are in peak, what I would call peak distrust right now. And I would probably start, the market entry there would be around AI. No question, AI is, and we'll talk about hype in a second, no question AI is going to be a category. I think it's not whether we're going to win or AI is going to win. I think it's about how do we coexist with AI. So I would probably work with a group of individuals to kind of figure out, look, how do we get to a place where we can simplify the magic that is underneath AI so much that we can understand it enough to put a scoring system around it. Right? Every model is going to need a score. Just like humans have trust scores, we have the FICO score. We're going to need a FICO score for every AI model. And it's going to have to be partitioned as like, this is the PG-13 models, these are the G models, and these are the rated R models. That's something that really excites me. I think that's probably more of a community game than an individual game. That's a whole different kind of gym to go put your career in. As far as the hype, look, every new thing that we have ever invented has had hype, and the hype dies. The question to me is what happens after the hype? And AI is real. Just look at the scholarly publications and just look at the curve of mentions, as opposed to blockchain was like a sudden 2-year publication spike, or metaverse was a sudden spike. This is going to perform like the internet. This is not going to be an AI model game. This is going to be a business model game. I think it's a moment to reflect on business models.
For those of you watching, go to Richie's LinkedIn and watch his Nexus keynote on AI being a global equalizer. Richie is very prolific on LinkedIn with his keynotes and white papers and blogs and podcasts. So yeah, please check out Richie's LinkedIn. It's just wealth of knowledge and all relevant and important.
Well, here's the summary. 2030 is the new 2050. We're here with Richie Etwaru, co-founder and CEO at Mobeus. And you can follow him at Twitter. I'm just going to say it. Maybe it's X, at Richie Etwaru. So, hey, thanks for being on the show. Happy Friday.
My pleasure. Happy Friday, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
From the future to the current. Yeah, we're going to talk about MEMS. Keep going, man.
What a privilege for us to speak to a pioneer, the person who put silicon in Silicon Valley. Rajesh Vashist, CEO of SiTime. Rajesh is SiTime's chairman and chief executive officer and has served in this role since 2007. SiTime is a precision timing company. SiTime's programmable solutions offer a rich feature set that enable customers to differentiate their products with higher performance, smaller size, lower power, and better reliability. SiTime is the #1 oscillator supplier in the world, and we're going to talk about the significance of that. We are talking over 3 billion SiTime devices with over 300 applications. Prior to joining SiTime, Rajesh was CEO and chairman and board of directors of Akinos Communications. Rajesh led the organization from a 2-person per revenue startup to a public company with 90% market share and a market value of $600 million. Wow. Prior to Akinos, Mr. Vashist served as general manager of a $450 million business at Aptech, a storage company. Welcome, Rajesh, to DisrupTV.
Thank you so much, guys. Thanks so much for having me. And by the way, listening to Richie, I understand completely why you have him on the show. I mean, the eloquence of that guy in talking about everything, I was hanging on to his every word.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Well, you're the cleanup hitter. In baseball, this is when you come in and hit a grand slam. So.
Well, he set it up well for me because he talked about entrepreneurship. And out of the 6 companies I've been working for since 1984, I worked for 6 out of the 6. 4 have been startups. And since 99, I've been a CEO of startups. So from 99 to 23, whatever that is, 24 years, I know exactly the muscles. I know exactly the entrepreneurship issues that he's been talking about. As you mentioned, Akinos Communications was my first company. I started with 2 people. Behruz Rezvani and we started the company. It was a leader. It's a 95% market share leader. We triumphed over companies like Broadcom and Texas Instruments and Infineon and ST Microelectronics. But what I discovered was, again, pointing to Richie, I'm going to be pointing to him a lot in this conversation. He talked about solving big problems. And I might add, big markets come with big problems. In other words, as you know, the higher the risk, the greater the success. So for me, we solved great problems in that company, and $600 million IP value creation in 2006 was a big deal. But we weren't big enough. And everything that I've learned is you watch somebody say retail is done, and somebody comes in and redefines retail. A giant trillion-dollar giant is born. Somebody says coffee has been done for 500 years. Along comes a company, Starbucks, revolutionizes. Everybody stands 3 times a day to buy $5 coffees now.
Burnt beans.
Yeah. Whatever the quality of the coffee, that's a different issue. The point is, you've got to find a big playground, come in with a highly differentiated technology, highly differentiated solution, and then change the game. So I, along with the help of others, identified this company. It was funded by NEA and Greylock. My previous company was funded by Greylock and Sequoia Capital. So one message for some entrepreneurs who may be watching is do go after venture capital, but go after the best venture capital, because guys like Sequoia, guys like Greylock, guys like NEA, these are worth their weight in gold. Don't worry about dilution. Worry about value creation. That's more important than dilution. In any case, I came to this company. Sorry, you were saying?
No, those are some of the best names here in the Valley. And I think I wanted to take a step back and really ask the one question is, what does the company do and why is this so important to get precision timing, right? Like, what does it mean for industries like space and defense and, critical
and Rajesh, as you speak to us about what the company does, also a little bit of a reflection on the fact that I believe when you started in 2007, there were about 5-6 companies you were competing with and you won. So what was the formula of competing with a half a dozen companies in your space and coming out clearly the winner?
Yeah, that's right. And that was not an easy battle. I mean, we're talking this is hand-to-hand combat.
So Ray, to go back to what is the value of precise timing, we have to go back to about 300 years and the fact that sailing ships were going off and losing people, cargo, money, because they couldn't plot longitude. This has been written beautifully in a book that came out about 30 years ago called Longitude by Deva Sobel. And Parliament, UK Parliament, put out a prize of £20,000 on creating a chronometer which was precise, which was producible, which was small, lower power, and functioned in all environmental conditions. That was 1723. And a guy called Harrison, who was a carpenter, got it right and got the £20,000. But SiTime is essentially doing the same thing here in 2023.
So
300 years later,
on steroids.
That's right. Except the chronograph, which was this chronometer, which was this big, is now a chip which is 0.5 by 0.5 millimeter at the smallest, all the way up to 5 millimeter by 7 millimeter. Wow. So precision timing is important because we need to know where to go, how to go, when to go, at what level to go. So if you need timing in a mouse that you move around, it's not very important because the timing isn't that important. But if you're SpaceX and you're going to send 26,000 satellites into space and then send another 20, 30,000, then it becomes really, really critical to have very precise timing. Sharp cannons need it. Watches that are, like a smartwatch, they need it. I dare say a cigarette, an e-cigarette, needs to know how to burn tobacco precisely. They need it. We have 30,000 use cases for this. But to go back to what you were asking, Vala, is about when I got started in this company, it was a 30% company. It already had a product, and it was, as you said, competing with 5 other startups, but 3 large companies, a company called IDT, which is called now Renaissance, a company called Silicon Labs, and a company called Maxim, which is now part of Analog Devices. These are great and storied names. The short answer of how we won is by focus. We won by focus. We won by paying attention to leadership. We won by paying attention to culture. We won by saying we will not be denied. We will win this. So by 2013, again, like my previous company, we were 95% market share again, because solving the problem of material science, solving the problem of circuits, solving the problem of putting them together, making it small, making it low power, and as you've pointed out, shipping 3 billion units to date.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
By the way, 3 billion units is a very small number in this market. In any year, about 40 billion units get shipped. So we've got a long way to go.
So my understanding is this is an $8 billion market that's been growing about a 5% rate for the last 50 years. It's projected in 10 years, this $8 billion market is going to be a $20 billion market. These numbers may be outdated, but it's based on my understanding. Can you tell us, when you're talking about hyperscalers, 5G, edge computing, you mentioned SpaceX, but Tesla and autonomous vehicles, it seems like anything that can connect will connect, and precision timing is going to be even more important in this decentralized, hyper-connected world of ours. Are these projections of $20 billion market, is that accurate? Is that in line with your understanding?
That's very accurate. You're very much on point. When I started in this business, the market was about 4 or 5 billion. As you said, it's been growing 5% compounded. But the real story is the stuff that needs precision timing, which we define as hard to do timing in tough environmental conditions. That is AI, that is ADAS, that's electrification, that's Internet of Things, that's personal computing, that's networking, that's telecommunications. That's growing anywhere from 30% to 60% CAGR, right? So that's the one, that's the line that we are riding, and that's the part that we're going for. But if you also have to step back a little bit and say, so all this, what was here before? Because if you are such a percentage, if you're 3 billion units shipped out of 30, 40 billion units a year, what else is doing the job? Well, the story is about quartz, crystal quartz. We have talked about it. We talked about watches that have quartz.
Yeah.
That's been the dominant technology since 1947. And the biggest difference, whatever else we want to know, is we're semiconductor based and they're not. So it's an old story of semiconductors goes up against some non-semiconductors, and we know how the end goes. The end goes semiconductors always wins, because there's never been a technology that's so good at quality, so good at reliability, performance, production, cost, etc. We saw this happen in bulbs, LEDs to old bulbs. We saw this happen in disk drives and flash drives. This is an old story. So SiTime is going after a non-semiconductor market, bringing a semiconductor solution. We went public in 2019 under the ticker symbol SITM. We went public at $13 a share. I haven't looked today what the stock is, but I think it's around $130. So less than 4 years, 10
We should have had you on our show years ago. Ray and I would have been so much wealthier.
Well, what I always tell my
I'm
investors,
investing in SiTime. That's awesome.
what I tell my investors is the market has just started. On a scale of 1 to 10, we're at 1.5 in going after this. Because as you said, the market grows to 20 billion, and our market, the market that we're interested in, our served market, if you were, we think in a decade it's going to be anywhere from 7 billion to 10 billion. And our revenue, who knows what it is? You know, I'm not making any forward-looking statements as a public company CEO, but I believe that SiTime will continue to grow at the 30% growth rate that we promised the world. We promised them a 30% growth rate starting in 24 with a 65% gross margin and a 30% net profit margin.
Hey, Vala, those are all public comments that are available. But here's the thing: they were at $300 at the peak of the tech boom in 2021. That's all you need to know. It is crazy. So, but let's talk about how precision timing impacts our lives. Like, what does it mean? Like for jet ink printers, like why do they need these, right? Like talk about like why you need these in missile defense systems. Like maybe like what do you need these in just consumer electronics? Like what is that you're orchestrating or that companies are trying to orchestrate as they go from analog to digital?
Right. So let's take a look at a consumer product, like say a Garmin smartwatch, like an adventuring watch or a runner's watch. Sure. So basically, by our chip sitting in that case, it's a 32 kilohertz, to be a little bit techie, 32 kilohertz chip sitting next to say a power management chip. Because their chip can power down reliably, because it depends upon our chip to wake it up reliably. So it's sort of like having a super reliable alarm clock. You have to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, but you can't trust your alarm clock. So you wake up at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and lose a bunch of cycles. Miserable life, right? But in this case, you rely upon it to wake you up at 5 exactly. So we wake it up, it connects, it does what it has to, and then goes back to sleep, saving power. That's a great example of that. In an AI chip, like an inference performance, the signals need very low latency. The signals need a high level or low level of jitter, a jitter in the signal that they get in the clock, and they need very high level of stability, which is measured in parts per billion or parts per million of stability. So if you want a certain frequency, you want it super, super, super stable. So that's what we provide in that. And in the case of let's see, what else? In the case of ADAS, an automated driving vehicle, again, you need super low latency because, you know, if there isn't latency, you're going to have a crash. So it becomes really important. So we have around 300 such applications, everything from smart fuses for rockets and munitions, all the way to, as in my example, electronic cigarettes. Not all electronic cigarettes, only some, but it's all over the map.
So, so when I think about the 8 billion to 20 billion forecast in the next decade, I think about this year, just this year alone. NVIDIA joins the $1 trillion club. Incredible success in terms of AI turbocharging their forecast and their growth rates. The CHIPS Act, obviously, as I mentioned, generative AI, this appetite that we all have in business for real-time contextual understanding of our surroundings. And the key word here, real time. We want to be able to deliver value at the speed of need. So whether it's a consumer application or a business-to-business application, everyone in sales, service, marketing, commerce, all lines of business, we're trying to leverage technologies like large language models, machine learning, Internet of Things, combinatorial impact of all these technologies, so we can differentiate ourselves based on speed. So what are your thoughts in terms of the semiconductor industry, given the world waking up to the power of AI? Seems like, November of last year with ChatGPT, but all of the sciences, all of the machine learning, natural language processing, deep learning, computer visioning, about 13, 14 different classes under this AI umbrella. And every CXO that I speak to wants to know, how do I improve productivity using AI? How do I improve, ability to serve my customer and earn their business? It just seems to be speed, personalization, and real-time engagement is top of mind for everyone. And for me, it seems like that's a kind of a turbocharged element for your business. But I'm interested in your thoughts.
That's right. So the COVID biggest tragedy that it was, with millions of lives lost, for the semiconductor industry was the biggest boost ever. Yeah. And the reason was because people discovered that they couldn't get washing machines, they couldn't get refrigerators, they couldn't get cars. And people who had no idea what semiconductors or chips were called up the congressman and said, I was told by the car guy that I can't buy a car because of something called a chip shortage. So that, I believe, is what spurred the CHIPS Act. Yeah. It wasn't the drive for AI. So, we always have to make sure that the semiconductors has been, if you think of world economy, it's $100 trillion of GDP if you put the whole economy together.
Yeah.
And semiconductors is only 700 billion or $0.7 billion or trillion dollars, excuse me. I think beauty products are about 1.5 trillion, by the way.
2x.
Right. Yeah, look at the priority here,
Yeah. So for me, the point is that it's easily that I remember a time when semiconductors did not get any respect. When if you went to a VC with a new chip, they're like, oh man, that's too difficult. It takes 10 years, $100 million. I can go invest in 10 internet startups for that much amount of money.
Yeah.
So, and I can get greater security. But the good part about semiconductors,
cosmetic companies.
That's right.
We're talking about poor capital allocation here,
Exactly. But semiconductor companies are hard to do. Semiconductors tough to do, but easy to understand. So we can go to a customer, we can go to a networking customer, we can go to an automotive customer and show them our spec versus the quartz industry spec. And our spec is way higher. And that's it, we win. Our marketing and sales, unlike a software company, are relatively low. And that is the beauty of semiconductors, why they become money-making machines, because one chip costs the same amount to make as 100 chips, and you don't have to do anything more, just keep on printing them out. But semiconductors is, in fact, a way for software, for AI, for processing to get to, and the need for speed, as you said, the need for low latency, the need for higher throughput, the need for a surgeon in the United States here in San Francisco wanting to operate on someone in, say, India with instantaneous operation. That is what is driving it, right? The centimeter accuracy while you're driving a car and knowing exactly what's happening in a factory, all of those are driving semiconductors. So I'm, of course, very bullish on semiconductors, and I'm thrilled that I've been leading a company for 16, 17 years where we've been transforming the industry. We're the only company on the face of the planet that's focused on timing. Nobody else does timing exclusively. That's all we do. We do timing. So that's why our name is SiTime, Silicon Time, just in case you needed these.
That's amazing. What a great reminder to the startup founders and young entrepreneurs who are aspiring to achieve your success. Focus. Find an area that's important and be the best at it, and good things can happen. Any other advice? I asked Richie the same because I often get folks reaching out to me on LinkedIn thanking us for the guests we have on the show, and a lot of them are founders and aspiring CXOs. Any advice? It's clearly what's common with both you and Richie is two individuals that have really focused on solving hard problems and being best at what they do. And he mentioned going to the gym as an analogy. Any routines, any habits that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, I mean, listen a lot, listen much more than you talk. I don't always practice it, but I do believe that's important. But I think Richie said it, which is look for the biggest problems to solve, look for the toughest problems to solve. Because even if you're going to be unsuccessful, and hopefully you're not, the amount of learning that's going to come, that's transforming to you. Because at the end of being an entrepreneur, the biggest reward isn't in changing the world, which it is. It isn't in financial reward, which there is. It is in looking at the mirror and saying, I did this. I am capable of this. I can transform this. It's personal impact. And what we tell people here who join SiTime is you're coming to SiTime to have an impact. If you want to just coast, this is not the company for you. But come here to have an impact on the world in whatever way you want to. Come and become the best version of yourself. And I heard this from the Zoom CEO in a talk, and I'm like, wait, that's my line. But it seems it's his line too.
Well, I saw a video of your university recognizing your legacy and work. And the video had all these incredible, accomplished leaders talking about your humility, your ability to listen and encourage with empathy and inspire others. And I can see it in the last 20 minutes you've been with us. So really appreciate your shared wisdom. Right?
Yeah, no, I was saying like this is one of the things that we keep hearing from great leaders and great founders, right? We try to have the top CEOs on the show, and the leadership lessons that you pass on to the next generation is more valuable than anything else. That's the personal impact here on the show, and it's also looking at trends. It's also seeing what's actually happening in categories, and thinking big, right? The semiconductor market itself, right, is being transformed as we speak as well. You've got CHIPS Act, you've got industrial policy that hasn't been put into place before. What does it mean, right? I mean, AI is going to clearly have an impact on semiconductors, but what does it mean post AI, post into quantum, right? I mean, you're probably forecasting what that future may look like. Like what is timing? What does timing look like in quantum? Did it happen or didn't it happen? I mean, these are going to be fun questions. So.
Well, quantum-based timing is not that far away. Wow. Quantum-based timing is not that far away. It basically, I've seen some accuracy in timings, just to geek you out a little bit, sure, is that you would lose 1 second in 64 billion years, given that the life of the universe is 13 billion.
Oh, wow. That's
awesome.
Incredible. Rajesh, where do you recruit engineers? Is there a particular geography, institution?
Wherever we can.
Wherever you can.
We have an office in Santa Clara. We have an office in Ann Arbor, Michigan. We have an office in Lviv, Ukraine. Okay. We've had an office there, and the boundless creativity and boldness of those people who are keeping on working in Lviv while it's being bombed is amazing. Wow. We have an office in Helsinki. We have an office in Netherlands. We have an office in Tokyo, Japan, in Taiwan, in Ipoh, in Malaysia. So we go wherever the talent is.
Is it harder to recruit? Is it harder to recruit?
Back to what Ray was saying, what does it mean with the CHIPS Act and the focus in chips? Yeah. One thing that's happening is that more and more young Americans are considering going into semiconductors, are considering doing double E's. are considering going into engineering as a consequence of that. It's not quite the Sputnik moment, but it's a little bit close-ish to that. So that's one thing. And I think recruitment is not the difficult part.
Yeah.
We need some hyper-dedicated people to solve the world's toughest timing problems. We need them in the area of physics. We need them in the area of material science. We need them in the area of circuit, in packaging and software. And so pulling together this global team, and we're only a sub 400 people company. And that's it.
That is amazing scale. Who says there's no money in semiconductors?
That is amazing scale.
Remember, 30% operating profit margins. That's what we did before the recent downturn.
That's crazy and
incredible. That is
unless
incredible. You're Apple. The number one, the company putting silicon in Silicon Valley sub 400. That's amazing. That's a credit to you. And, I guess Richie kind of mentioned that when you're a CEO founder, you sometimes have to roll up your sleeve and get on the factory floor. My sense is that you're very close to the innovation, the roadmap, and all of the incredible work that's happening at the company at SiTime.
That's right. That's right.
This is very cool. So we're here with Rajesh Vashist, CEO of SiTime. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, sharing some insights that we probably never would learn from a leadership perspective and from a technology perspective. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ray. Thank you so much, Vala. Great questions. Great guests.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Every show, Vala.
Every show. And, you see two ends of the spectrum. Our first guest into entrepreneurship journey, 3, 4, 5 years, trying to build, an amazing company who's been at it for 16 years and now is the #1 supplier of precision timing in silicon solutions in the world, the #1 producer of oscillators in the world, and a company that was trading at $300 a share not long ago with less than 400 people. That's wow. That's awesome. Okay, try to wrap up lessons that you learned in a minute of this episode.
Not possible, but all I can say is that, look, I mean, if you really want to be successful in any area, it's really about having a different mindset, right? Not just in how you lead, not in terms of how you define the problem, tell the story. You really have to come at it from a different way. This is one of the things that a lot of AI founders are going to discover as they go through this journey. I was recently in a number of conversations in Cerebral Valley and in Shack 15 and some of the other places where you're seeing a lot of these new startups grow. It's hard. It's not an easy thing. And even in a large company, right, it's, doing a level of transformation to get to a level of scale and dominance, it's the same thing, right? So whether you're in a startup or whether you're in a large company trying to create this transformation, I would say it's harder in an established larger company because you've got existing processes you got to fight against. But it's hard in a startup because you don't have the resources, right? You don't have the networks and the places in place, and you've got to play a very different game. And I think as we talk to more CEOs, as we interview folks in the next 12 months on DisrupTV, we're going to see that. We're going to see patterns in leadership that we probably should feed into an AI model anyways, and then we won't have to do anything. But just kidding. But when we do that, we're going to find some amazing insights, and we're going to continue to share those with our audience.
I can't wait for you to feed our last 332 episodes to an LLM, only to come back to me and say, I have a new co-host, and it's an AI. Vala, thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Vala, actually, you're very close to some of the secret projects we are working on, and I will talk about that. But you and I will still be on the show. Rest assured.
Okay, great. Yeah, once you find out that the quality of questions from a language model is much more insightful than my questions, I think I'm going to have to figure out a different.
No. We'll still be on the show. You'll be good. We need human supervision in our training.
I suppose. One thing I do want our audience to take away is that these two guests that were on our show, super charming, super nice, super empathetic, but warrior mindset. There's no way for these men to achieve what they've achieved without grit, persistence, discipline, just mental and physical toughness. So, don't give up and just keep moving. If it's Friday, it's DisrupTV. Next week on our show, episode 333, we have Raul Panella, co-founder, CEO of Granica, and Mike Fuller, CTO and Fins Ops Foundation, Mark Logan, CEO of One Identity, and William Eggers and Donald Kettle, authors of Bridge Builders. Bridge Builders. So if it's Friday, it's Disrupt TV. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next Friday. Bye, everyone.
Yep, and we'll see our guests in the green room.